having another off season with Reed Kagi, how much did that mean? First, you had one of the youngest teams in terms of experience working with him, and now you've got, according to ESPN's Bill Conley, the most production coming back. How much of a boon has it been for them to have another session with him?
Yeah, I would say it's been monumental in our growth process. I think Reed really came in and established at least an identity in the weight room last year in terms of, at least philosophically who we want to be. I think from a strength and conditioning standpoint, him and his staff really did a great job. And then, I would say the other area that meshes with that staff, I think equally, is we have such an elite nutrition team. And, Nicole and Johnny that kind of run our football nutrition program. And I think that's what's been really fun to watch is those two teams work so hand in hand together on not only what is your strength, but how do we physically get you to maximize your days in the weight room. Equally, how do we physically get you to a playing weight that's going to allow you to maximize your full potential? And I think that's probably the greatest growth we've made in our football program in the last year and a half. I think our young men's commitment to that, and then I think having unbelievable leadership in both those areas, it has made a profound difference. And I know I said that with our young guys, but again, I would also say Darian Porter, last year was probably playing at 180 pounds. He's 200 pounds right now. You'd say the same thing about Jared Hufford. Jared Hufford's a 6-year player. Those are our two oldest players, and that guy physically looks completely different than he looked even at times last season. So I just see that growth process, and again, I know I've talked about in our program, we have to be able to win in the margins. We have to be elite in nutrition. We have to be elite in the weight room, and I think those two leaders, Nicole and Reed, they have just been nothing short of exceptional, and then their teams underneath them have they've taken such great care of our football team. I'm beyond grateful to lead with them for sure.
With an opportunity to get into a scrimmage setting this past weekend, what difference can film from scrimmage provide as opposed to practice film, and what was that like going over with the players?
Yeah, I think the biggest difference is you take the coaches off the field and everybody is on the sideline, and where there were some people in the stands. We had our parents here this weekend, which I think was great, and so you kind of put yourself and it's just a little different environment. I think we got about 50 plays with our ones, we got about 40 plays with our twos, and about another 40 plays with our threes, and so and then you got a little bit of special teams work. I think our major emphasis was on offense and defense a little bit, and some situational stuff in the punt game. But it's like I feel like it's if we're in school, it's like you're 4 weeks in and it's your first major test. Where are we? Where's our strengths? Where's our weaknesses? How do we grow forward? And then, you get to add some more pieces to the curriculum this week. You get into more situational football this week, and then you can add that to, hopefully another scrimmage here shortly, and then continue to evaluate the growth of this football team. But I think that's the fun thing about being so young and having some experience is they understand now what these situations are, now getting to go out, whether you pass or you fail the situation, can we autocorrect and can we come back and not make the same mistake twice? And I think that's probably where you're seeing the most growth right now in this football team, and that's really fun to watch.
Couple for you here, Matt. First off, just kind of a housekeeping thing. Any changes, position moves, injuries, stuff like that to report?
Yeah, I think the only unfortunate injury that we have is Daniel Jackson got injured last week. I think more than likely he'll be out for the year, lower leg injury, and obviously Daniel's back with our football team already, but just tough because he's been through so much. I would say the one thing he's already shown is just incredible leadership through that, and we'll kind of just navigate where that takes Daniel as we go. But we love Daniel and we think the world of him, but that's fortunately for us the only major injury that we have right now. I think everything else is, we're either day to day or guys are, we're kind of pulling guys out and, helping guys just based on where they are in their career. But, I think we're a really fortunate football team to be where we're at least right now in this portion of fall camp. And from us, changes, I think right now is, we feel like pretty confident of the evaluation of the players at the positions they're in currently is really where we're holding at least going into this week.
And I ask you this every year, this point in camp, standouts from maybe the beginning, maybe position groups that have really stuck out.
Yeah, it's hard. I think probably the thing that's been so again, this has been rewarding for this team, is that it's been a really back and forth camp. You know, there's a lot of really good competition across the board right now. So you're not seeing domination. You're seeing, man, there's a lot of groups flashing, and then you see a response by the next group the next day, or, you know, halfway through practice. We just had an incredible practice, and, man, the defense came out hot. The offense came right back, and, you know, we end up, you know, having a final situation to kind of end the day, which was awesome to see. And so I think that part's certainly hugely positive. I think some individuals, you know, standing out so far. Again, I think this week will tell us so much of who's really into it. But some young pups, Cale Brzezina's had a really good camp. I know he's a young guy I talked about that I think has really flashed in a profound way so far early on in camp. It's been really fun to watch what he's accomplished. I know we talked about Kennard Snyder. I think that guy continues to flash in a really positive way for us. You know, I think the veterans on offense have really done a great job. And then, you know, I would tell you probably the positive is on the other side of it. I don't know if you're really disappointed in anybody right now. I think you see a lot of guys competing, and I think this week 3 of fall camp, it's kind of separation time, you know, and what gets separated, where do we go from here? Today's practice, tomorrow's practice, and then, you know, Saturday's practices. Those are big practices for at least a preliminary depth chart as the season gets closer upon us. But yeah, I think there's a lot of competition right now, a lot of guys that are peaking and a lot of guys that are competing right now. But I'm certainly not disappointed with our football team.
Coach, with half of the Big 12 being new teams in the last 2 years, what are maybe some of the advantages and disadvantages of that from your perspective?
Yeah, you know, I think just it'll hard to say what that looks like until I feel like you get through, you know, the games. I think last year, having at least part of that turnover last year, you know, and us getting to play at Cincinnati and play at BYU last year, and obviously this year we'll get, you know, the newcomers from a year ago, Central Florida and Houston. I think the positive is as a coach and a competitor, you love to go to different environments and play. You know, BYU was a really special place to go play. Great atmosphere. Cincinnati was the same way. Both have great football traditions. So, you know, I think it's hard till kind of the landscape settles to give you an exact answer. But, you know, I know for us, it certainly is enjoyable to go play different places and play against people maybe you haven't played before. But I think when you still look at this conference top to bottom, I think what makes it really hard and really unique is, boy, you better bring it every Saturday. I mean, we didn't bring in a team that's going to lessen the value of the competition. And so I think when you look at your schedule and you look who you got to play, whether it's home or away, you got to bring your A game. You got to play football in this conference. I think there certainly is a lot of parity, a lot of teams that look alike, similar characteristics, and when that happens, you're going to have to do all the little things really well to win football games, and I think that's certainly the challenge for the Big 12 and certainly Iowa State football within this Big 12 conference right now.
Matt, in terms of the schedule for camp, how many scrimmages would you like to have before you get into game week practice?
Yeah, you know, I think the intensity that a scrimmage can bring sometimes, I think, you know, we had our first one Saturday. There's portions of that in this week's practice. You know, I feel like those are really important because I think from my end of it, getting the coaches off the field and testing the knowledge of our football team. I've always said I think there's you know, you're almost got the cheat sheet when your coach is out there and telling you, hey, you got to get lined up here and get here. That's not real football. That's fake. So the reality is when the coaches get off, how do you quantify what a young man really knows, and how do we quantify what our team really knows? And so today's practice, a little bit tomorrow's practice, will have pieces of scrimmage situations, and then, you know, on Saturday we'll have another, you know, where primarily the main focus of practice will have scrimmage situations involved as well. And so, you know, once we get there, I think you try to look at your football team, you know, where and how much then before you're 2 weeks out before your first game, you know, how much do you need in that next week as you kind of get yourself going. But I think I would tell you 3 more days, 2 now, you know, I think are really important for the mentality, the physicality, and the type of execution you'd like to have with your football team, at least going into the early part of the season.
Hi, Coach. I have a couple along the same topic. In Vegas, you talked about how exciting it was to experience with some of the technology advances in college football. Assuming you use those in the scrimmage, what was your experience with some of those things?
Yeah, our main focus really early on was probably more the quarterback and linebacker communication, just because, I think from my end of it, that's the most important. How we want to play, how you have the ability within the flow of the game to communicate. And I'd just say it's been a great learning curve. What does each quarterback like? How do they like to be talked to? How much do they want? How much is too much? And then I'd say the same thing. How are we communicating to the guy that's got the green dot on defense? And that can be a multitude of different people based on kind of what we're doing, which that's been a whole process. So I think it's been really great learning process. I think for me, I've got such a curiosity to how that can play out, that it's been really enjoyable to kind of work through that. And then actually today was the first day we even brought an iPad out to practice and just started to kind of use that. And again, how do you communicate through that? We'll try to use it this week in practice to kind of prep ourselves for the game. But again, I think the great thing about football is you can add all this stuff, but there can be paralysis by analysis sometimes, and we don't want to be that either. And so I think taking it slow and right rather than trying to just, flood our kids with so much information. I mean, you got to still tackle, you got to catch, you got to block, you got to do all the things that win games. So I think just trying to find that sweet spot for us.
On defense specifically there, you mentioned that multiple players could have the green dot on their helmet. How have you gone about identifying some of those players, and if you're comfortable, who are those players specifically?
Yeah, I think, the who for us is still kind of like evolving, I would say. We've tried linebackers, we've tried safeties. I just think for us, it comes down to communication. And again, you're only allowed to have one, right, on the field at one time. So, I think what we're looking at is different personnel packages, different situations. Who is that? Who do you want to have that? And at the end of the day, I think defensively, the greatest gift you can give is situational awareness, and I think that's what we've really tried to work on.
And then offensively, last one for me. You mentioned obviously trying to figure out the wrinkles of everything communicating with the quarterback. Are you going to be the one talking with them, or will that be Coach Mauser?
Yeah, and it won't be me, which is probably the good thing. I think Rocco can hear me plenty well enough most of the time. So, but I think from my end, where we've kind of worked back and forth, Coach Mouse, Coach Waters, who's going to do that? I think there is maybe some thought process that, let the play caller be the play caller, let the quarterback coach potentially be the communicator. We kind of work back and forth, and I don't know if we've hammered it out exactly, but that's kind of been our toggle rather than, having me be on there and drive him crazy. I'm not going to do that.
Speaking of the offensive coordinator, I guess what's just been your impression of him running his first fall camp?
Yeah, and again, I think what I love about Mouse is, he's got great curiosity. He's a constant growth process, and I think he's done a great job so far. I think what I've been so impressed with him is, taking 9 years of evolution, and you can even go back to some great offensive coaches at Toledo. Mouse is an elite student of the game, and I think, what started to occur a year ago, picking up from, all the great things that Tommy brought to some of the great things that Nate was able to bring to the table, and now Mouse having the ability to put his spin on it with that staff back together. And I'd probably say the greatest gift that Taylor's getting is you have such continuity back with that staff. I think it's a really dynamic offensive staff, and obviously you throw Coach Roll in. I think some of the spin that he's been able to bring in terms of, he's been that play caller, he's led the room, and really the impact that he's had on his position group, let alone, the offense. It's been really fun to watch. So I've been super impressed. I'm really proud of him and really excited to watch him continue to evolve as we get ready.
As a former coordinator, I'm curious, his job is big, and he's got to do a lot of different things for a long time, and then the only thing people are going to care about is if he calls a play they don't like on third down, it's public enemy number one.
Yes.
What's that like, where there's so much that goes into it, but this little sliver is the public enemy?
Yeah, I think that's what's really hard, but it's our job. I think that's what comes with it. It's no different than playing quarterback, and it's no different than being the head coach, and it's no different than, being the defensive coordinator and the offensive coordinator. I think in leadership positions, that's part of the world we live in. You're going to be, half the people are going to think you're good, and the other half is going to think you stink, and that's just the way it goes. But the reality of it is, man, can you keep growing? Can you keep getting better? It's like no different than any player that you're talking to. Can you not worry about the result, but really focus in on the process? And usually when your process is really, really good, you're more times than not, you're going to get the result that you want. And again, that's where I think my impression of Taylor's been so positive. And, you know, as that leader, it's like any leadership position in life, like how you respond to the good days and the bad days, how you respond to success, how do you respond to failure. If you're authentic and you're real and you say, hey, man, I screwed this up, I got to get better yourself, then I think what people do is naturally rally around you. And I think that's always been Taylor's gift is, man, he is such a selfless human and he listens to his staff and people around him that I think people gravitate to him. So I think no matter what the outside world will ever think of Taylor, he's got that unique ability that I don't think he's ever going to put his chips on, man, what's the outside world think? Man, how are we doing this? Am I doing what's best for the best interest of the team? Man, do the kids believe in me? Man, and when I do screw up, hey, can I say, because we all screw up, none of us are going to be perfect. Taylor will have bad calls, I'll have bad calls, Coach Haycock's going to have bad calls. But man, can you have more good ones than bad ones? And that's the key. And can you have great ownership when, man, it's not right? Can I be my best? And I think that's probably one of the great things I love about our coaching staff right now is I think you got a bunch of leaders that believe that's the focus and kind of rally for each other, which is hugely positive too.
What are you seeing from Rocco?
Yeah, I think, you know, Rocco really, really had a great day Saturday. I think you see a guy that I would say a year ago was competing, you know, to just figure out if he can do this, you know, and I've always said this about Rocco. I think Rocco is a young man that's always earned the right to be confident. And he had to work through some things, even as I think we would all identify even the early part of last season. Like you saw his confidence really grow. And honestly, after the second half of the Ohio game, you saw a guy that at least said, I can do this. And I think everybody else said, he can do this. And it was really fun to watch. And now you see a guy that I think when you're a great quarterback, you become like a surgeon. You don't get emotionally caught up in all the other stuff that's going on. You're like coming in and you're challenging yourself with elite precision and detail. And I think that's where you started to watch Rocco really grow. You know, you see him really coming into practice, understanding and owning the situational parts of football, attacking that, getting the 10 players around him to understand what situation we're in, what's going on. Instead of just trying to get through it, he's like, man, give me more of those situations so I can succeed, fail, understand why it happened, and then keep moving forward. So, yeah, I think you see certainly a different football player right now, which is hugely positive, and that doesn't mean it's going to be better or worse. It just means I think a guy that's very mature and very confident in at least understanding the process it takes to be his best on Saturdays, and that right now that's fun to watch.
Coach, what type of void does Daniel Jackson's injury leave, and is there a early front runner or two to maybe fill that?
Well, you know, I think the greatest void that you have with Daniel is just the leadership and character that young man brings to our locker room. You know, I think Daniel's a guy that's persevered through really hard things, and probably the greatest joy that I had is watched right after, you know, he did have surgery. Right after his surgery, I was in there with the whole wide receiver unit, his parents, and almost everybody in our football team. I think that's how much respect our team has for him, and so I don't want to minimize the player because I think that would be certainly wrong, but I think I'm going to maximize the who he is, what he stands for. But, man, like I told you, I mean, he's out there at practice today. He was back on Saturday at practice with our football team at the scrimmage, you know, on the bench, helping our football team be successful. So I think that indicates the man, and I think that part of it I don't feel like we'll lose. You know, from a on-the-field piece, you know, there's a lot of competition. I mean, that room's heavy right now. I mean, there's a lot of players that are playing really good football. I mean, it's a room that's got great competition. It's a room that's got a lot of guys that are competing to be really special. And then you got two guys that are, I would say, having elite camps that are two of the best leaders maybe we've ever had in our football program, in Jalen and Jaden. And so, you know, I think we're in a spot where the next guys, whoever that'll be, will be ready to continue to pick up the rope and be ready to play. But yeah, I think Daniel's the man. That was probably my greatest concern, just because of what he's been through. But boy, it's been really special to watch him lead through hard. And you know, that's what life's about. Adversity's coming, tough things are going to happen. how you respond is who you are and indicative of who you become. And there's nobody more special at that than Daniel Jackson.
Just a quick follow-up there. I know he had an injury redshirt year already.
Yeah.
He's been here long enough to maybe have a COVID year. Was
Yeah.
this going to be his COVID year? Is there a chance he could come back?
Yeah, it's a great question, Rob. I think, we were already in conversation before the season even started and before this situation started about, man, where are we going to go with this? What do you want to do? And so, I think the biggest thing is in my conversation with him is, man, let's let this settle. Let's figure out where we are. And let's figure out if you're ready to go attack this thing from a football perspective. Daniel finished his degree this summer, had been starting on his master's degree right now. And so I still think there's a great focus for him to begin that journey. But the football piece of it, I think, it's just time. I think we're going to try to work through that, let this kind of navigate itself here the next couple of days, and then have that conversation probably at the end of fall camp.
Gotcha. And specialists, Kyle, you talked about how tight a bond he had with Chase last season. We heard about how much he pushed him as well. What do you see there? And then obviously Tyler Perkins, one of the best in the Big 12 2 seasons. How does he go to maybe the best?
Yeah. I think the thing about both those guys, Kyle, again, kind of like Brock a year ago, or Rocco a year ago, earning his confidence, first time having to kind of be the guy. And, what's been enjoyable is you watch him, and I said this in a team meeting, and hopefully this will probably get me in trouble, but, man, I really don't know what the heck, like the kicker, like that's like such a, I wish I could tell you I'm an elite kicking coach, but I think you guys always say that's probably not true. And the reality is that is true, but it's like, how do you give that guy confidence, and how do you keep, as the head coach, how do we put him in great situations to be successful? And what's been really fun to watch Kyle is, man, he's got this unbelievable mental toughness about him to kind of autocorrect and kind of work through it. And I really feel like he had a really great day today. There was a lot of field goal situations in today's practice. Had a great day Saturday. So I think, his consistency is really coming, and I think his confidence is growing. But again, first time through all this as being the guy, and that's a different animal than, competing for the job. We're excited for him. It'll be really fun to watch. Tyler Perkins, again, I think has great talent, and, his consistency, I would group him as some of the players you guys asked me about. Man, you've seen this guy, he's really good. What's going to make this guy a great player? And it's consistency for Tyler. There were times last year where he looked like one of the best punters in the Big 12. And then there's times where, man, we needed him to be better, and he wasn't as good as he needed to be. And so, I think just finding his consistency, Tyler's a relentless worker, a guy that certainly it's really, really important to, and we're really proud of him. But I think, can I consistently be my best when my number gets called? And I think that's defining of an elite punter, and it's easier said than done, because man, that may be 6, 5, 4 reps a game. Who knows? But you got to come out and you got to be able to be your best, and I think that's the maturity an elite punter would have the ability to have and show.
Putting on your CEO cap here with scholarship limits. You've been 85. You could go over that a little bit with COVID years there for a while. I think that's about at the end of its run now, and now you get 105 if you choose to use those. What's kind of your outlook on that, and what's Iowa State going to do?
Yeah, I would just say my outlook is probably constantly evolving, because I don't know. You're just I think until the rules and regulations clearly get defined, and I think they are, but they're still cloudy in my opinion at times, that piece of the equation at least is a little clearer today. Then, I think it's really hard to say, because I think it's a big picture, right? Like, how does Iowa State continue to be its best? And I think you can't just look at something like roster limits or this or this. I think you got to be able to put the whole picture together and then say, all right, man, this is how we're going to go attack it. I don't think much will change in terms of at least our mentality of, we got to find the guys that fit who we are and fit what our football program's about. And, obviously our development and culture is going to have to win out. And then, you know, I would say from an Iowa State perspective, at least early conversations with Jamie, I know there's a lot of time to figure all this out. But we want to compete at the highest level, you know, and I think there's either going to be a highest level or there's not. And I think you want to put yourself at least in the position to be in that. And I think Jamie's, you know, certainly working behind the scenes to continue to figure, man, what's this exactly going to look out? What is the highest level and how do we put ourselves in a great situation to be our best? Yeah, I don't know if that's what that means. You know, I think, again, that's putting all of it together. Some people, that may be what it means, but I think at the end of the day, how do you give your team and your program the best opportunity to be its best? And, you know, I think until you can put, you know, what is revenue sharing? What are those numbers look like? What does this whole thing look like? And then how do you do it best for you, you know, in your locker room, in your program? It's not, you know, it'll be a completely different world in one way, shape, or form. But I also think at the end of the day, it's going to put that much more emphasis on culture. And, you know, if we're saying we're trying to get a little bit closer to the NFL model, boy, there's still seems like there's 6 to 8 NFL teams that win every year, and everybody's playing at least at that level by the same rules. You know, we're nowhere close to that right now, right? We're as imbalance can be. So hopefully, no matter where we get, we're a little bit more close to, man, what is the level playing field? What does that look like? And then how do you put your athletic department and your football program in the best position to navigate, you know, whatever comes our way? And I just think we're so far away from that right now until there's absolute clarity. But at least it's a great question, and I think one that until you can put all the pieces of the puzzle together, it's a really hard question to answer. So thank you, guys.